Just a heads up, this episode deals with some pretty sensitive issues. So parents, before you listen with your kids, we ask that you listen first. Thanks so much.
Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.
Hello, Fortitude audience. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I am excited to introduce our guest, Dylan. But first, I will introduce my wonderful husband, Amos, who is the co-host of Fortitude.
Hello.
Thanks for being here, honey. I couldn't do this without you and all the technology stuff. Dylan, you are the founder of Wheelchair Adventures.
Yes.
Man, there's a lot to that I'm excited to dig in. So thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Your willingness to share your whole story. It's going to be a blessing to our audience. So let's dig in and just tell me who you are today. Let's talk about the now, the present. Who is Dylan?
So, my name is Dylan. So I live here in Sioux Falls right now. 29 years old, and I am a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, but I do not let that stop me one bit. I still take advantage of anything that I would have before and kind of really strive to do those things that a lot of people might assume or think that someone in my situation can't do anymore. So, yeah, I'm just here to try to spread my word and kind of go from there.
Okay. I was looking at your website earlier today and I just, the biggest smile on my face, like actually my cheek started to hurt a little bit because I thought, man, this guy is living life. Yeah. Truly, you did not let it stop you. Like to see the things that you're doing and not only what you're still able to enjoy, but you're taking people with you.
Right.
Like you made it a nonprofit to say, it is not the end of the world. There's so much more to do and for us to discover. So let's do it together. And
Absolutely.
So taking everybody on an adventure, like I want to go.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have to be in a wheelchair to go with you,
No,
do I?
all kinds of fun adventures to come.
Okay, good. Good. So let's go back to high school. Did you grow up in Sioux Falls?
So I grew up in Del Rapids, so from 8th grade on until I graduated from Del Rapids Public School.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where our little journey started.
Just north, small town, just north of Sioux Falls, where we're recording now.
Yeah, we have, our audience is global. We are global now. So when we talk about small things, people are like, where is that? Del Rapids is just north
Big
of small
giant
town.
Class of like 63, something like that. So
it is where Amos and I took our engagement photos.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. When we went up there by the river and took our pictures.
Beautiful areas.
We were young. We were really cute.
Still young.
So Dylan, you, when I was just getting the opportunity to get to know you and exchanging different communication back and forth, I was like, man, this man is full of life. Like you just have a spirit about you that you can tell comes from the Lord. And it's beautiful to hear, to listen, to see, to all of it. And, but it wasn't maybe all the case when you were younger. So can you tell us a little bit of what led up to your accident?
Yeah. So growing up, I really battled with a lot of mental health illnesses, things like that since a pretty young age, 13, 14 years old. So I grew up, my mom was a single parent most of my life. And then I've got a sister that's 4 years younger than me. And so I kind of grew up with that kind of male role mentality kind of stereotype that I think is thrown around too much anymore where, you're kind of the man of the family and you really don't want to show that emotion. Like you have to try to hold yourself together. And so on top of that kind of mental health stuff that I had, then kind of getting introduced to high school into a lot of alcohol and drugs and things like that, that's when it really started to spiral out of control. Even more so than I thought at the time, that I really should have reached out for help at that time.
Because in high school and when you start to get into those crowds and you start to drink and you're doing drugs and everyone's doing it. So it almost feels acceptable because everyone around you and the people you're hanging out with are doing it. And yet you're the only one individually, or whoever is all participating individually, are dealing with this darkness that comes with that. And so do you feel like it's masked when you walk back into that group and start all over again? No one checks in with each other.
Absolutely. You know, I always tell people, and you read all the time, it's those people that seem the happiest in their life sometimes that you have to watch out for, because I mean, a lot of people would have never even known in my situation. You know, I was that happy-go-lucky life of the party, you know, until it was after the party when you find yourself alone, when there's not that group of people around anymore. And then you really start to feel the effects on that depressant as an alcohol, you know, and now you're far enough into it and now you're alone that you really feel like you're completely alone. And so that can be super tough on a lot of people, especially when you don't know how to express it as a young teenager, especially.
Yeah. So anyone who minimalizes teenage drinking should really listen to this.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, I look back at it and some of the time, you know, like I had a lot of really good times doing, you know, drinking and things like that. But when I look back at it, it really just hindered me in so many ways that I'm just glad that I could get away from it now. You know, I for the longest time, you know, you really felt like, and like you said, all your friends were doing it. So you thought that if you didn't do it, that you weren't going to have fun with them or something like that, you know, that you couldn't go out and have fun without drinking or doing stuff like that. And so it's really amazing when you're able to open your eyes up to so many more things besides just that small little pocket of things.
Yeah. You are who you hang out with. That phrase is so true, right? You become those you hang around with. Amos, you, I think many, many years ago, you mentioned that the top 5 people.
You're the average of the top 5 people you spend time with.
The average. Yeah. And I also, were you in sports or anything, Dylan? Did you play?
I was early through high school, and then, you know, kind of later on in that high school, then again, the drinking really took over, and found more pleasure in doing things like that than any kind of group activities and sports and stuff like that, where you kind of had to be more disciplined and stuff like that. So you kind of fell away from that a little bit.
Yeah. So the deeper and darker that it gets, because we can relate. There's a lot of people who are listening to this right now who are like, I'm there with you. Because when you hit the rock bottom and you're in that dark space where you feel like you cannot get out and you cannot breathe, you were there. So can you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I spent quite a few years there. I feel like, you know, it wasn't until I was almost 19 years old that I tried to commit suicide, but there were many, many thoughts before that, and even attempts, you know, that never quite went through, or that you didn't quite come up with, I guess. And then almost sometimes those failed attempts or things like that almost made you feel worse about yourself, like that you didn't have enough, or you weren't enough to do something like that, you know. And so it really holds you down even more. But yeah, I was there for quite a few years, and it was a long road. Unfortunately, it led down to where I did, but I really think that it absolutely changed my life for the better. I tell everybody, and sometimes it's hard for people to imagine, you know, someone that is now in a wheelchair, more or less paralyzed from the neck down. But I truly believe that day saved my life, that I don't think I would have been going down the path that I am, and, you know, trying to help the people that I am and things like that. So I try not to regret a whole lot of things, you know, but it's more or less a stepping stone to that next place that you have to be. So,
what before your last attempt, do you think that there were signs that those around you could have picked up on, or do you think it was actually an impossible task, that you did such a good job of hiding it that they would have had to been proactive and ask questions rather than be reactive?
I think in my mind at the time, I think it was completely hidden. Even now, to this day, you know, I think that it was pretty good, but talking with some people and things like that, I think they definitely knew there were things going on. I don't know that they knew that were quite to that extent yet, you know, but they could definitely tell ramping up to it again. I mean, the alcohol just started getting more and more. And that was my first year of college, so I'm away from home now too, where I don't have that discipline there, that you can only get away with so many things or so many times, or I'm at college on my own now, where
nobody knows me.
No, and
everyone's drinking.
And it really started, then it was every day or every night, and then you start missing classes, and then, it all just piles up so fast, and it runs up on you that, when you get to this place where you're just in a place where you don't quite know what to do with it all.
Is there anything anyone could have done for you? And if so, what? What do you wish somebody would have stepped in high school and said to you?
That is such a hard one. And I have tried to think about that quite a bit. And I really just don't know that I could have an answer to that.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of things that you maybe could have changed up a little bit, but that's tough.
What about limits? Just saying no. You can't do this. You can't drink. Do you think that would have changed the outcome?
I think if I could have got away from it, I think it would have definitely. I probably had quite a few opportunities that I could have. I got into some legal trouble a couple of different times, and so there were definitely opportunities that I could have. And again, it was one of those things where it was hidden from a lot of people. I mean, I think my parents knew I did, but they didn't know that I did.
Yeah.
To that extent.
Yeah.
Or something like that, where it's like, I think it's kind of everything, with moderation, anything can be okay. But once you get so addicted to something that you can't moderate what it is, and that's a multitude of different things, including alcohol and all that once you kind of lose yourself, that's when you really have to take a step back and kind of try to realize exactly what you want and what direction God's pushing you in. You just have to kind of let him take control, and instead of trying to really control it, I was trying to control my life how I thought was in the right direction, the best outcome, and that's really just not exactly how it goes.
Yeah.
Take me to that day, Dylan.
Okay, October of 2013. I was at college, so long days, lots of homework, thing like that. Ended up being home that night, and had a couple things go on. So I had an on and off kind of girl-ish friend at the time that kind of played into it, and kind of everything kind of ramped up into it. That night I got in my car and kind of just took off driving. More or less just that was kind of my way to clear my head, just to kind of hit the road, kind of let things go. And unfortunately that night it all just kind of kept ramping up. And it ended up being almost 4:00 in the morning when it all happened. But yeah, just going down the road, decided that's the time that I thought it was going to be, and just yanked the wheel to the side. And so I remember everything up to then, but everything right about from that moment on, I don't have any memory of until after I woke up in the hospital and stuff like that, which some days I wish I could remember some of it, but then most days I'm pretty well content on it. So yeah, rollover accident. They say I got ejected, and so I got very fortunate. One of the first people on scene was an off-duty police officer on his way to work, and so he found me, and he knew that it was pretty bad right away, and so they actually closed down the highway right in between Hartford and Humboldt, and they actually closed the highway, landed a helicopter, and flew me into Sanford and stuff there. And so that's when everything kind of started coming together, where we realized that basically I had a compression fracture, basically C3 through C5, that there was some pretty extensive damage in there, that they had to go in and put titanium rods, screws, plates, kind of the whole rhyme or reason. And then it was kind of just a waiting game, to kind of let the swelling and all this, a lot of hectic trauma in this area to start fizzling down at least a little. So
what was going on in your head when you were in the hospital and you woke up and your plan was to not wake up?
And so it was a couple of days later even, when you really woke up and realized I instantly, thanked God that they kept me here, and that was something that was almost a tough decision at first too, because you didn't want it to happen, but at the same time, you didn't want to die either.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of people explain it, that I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to go away, and sometimes that's the only thing you can correlate with it to be able to stop that pain, especially in your young adolescent mind, that you don't know how to connect some of these things or things like that you just don't know what to do with a lot of it. And so it was extremely scary. I wake up in the hospital and I've got a breathing tube down my throat, and there's a lot of people in my room, but they weren't paying attention at the moment, really. And so I'm like trying to start moving my arms and my legs or something to get somebody's attention. And now it's like all really starting to sink in. I don't really know what's going on. And so then I started getting frustrated and started trying to bite the breathing tube. And so then they start putting plastic pieces in your mouth so you can't bite down on the tube. And, and then they sedate you again. And so then it was a couple of days later before I was, back out it again. But one of the most amazing things that I found out as soon as I woke up was just the overwhelming amount of support that was already there, at early hours of the morning, that they had multiple waiting rooms just full of people. And so right from that step forward, I just made the decision that I would never, ever make anybody that I cared about feel that way again, and for me to make that decision, I wish I would have made it a long time before that, because suicide kind of plagued our little town of Del Rapids for quite a few years leading up to this. I've got a lot of friends and a lot of families that's happened to before, so I took a lot of guilt in that also. I seen what a lot of these families and stuff went through, and then to think that I still knew what these people went through, but somehow or another this still infiltrated my life, that this was something that I thought was the best outcome, So it's just crazy that you don't realize how much of an effect it takes on you, that you don't realize until you're so far into it.
I appreciate you explaining it like that, because it is so hard. You hear people in suicide say it's one of the most selfish things a person could do, like one of the most selfish. And when you're on the other side of it, you don't think through the whole process, because you really are that far in to a deep depression where chemically you're not processing things right, especially if you're using some sort of alcohol or drug or whatever, which is enhancing the depression. But man, it doesn't feel selfish in the moment, does it? No. At all. You just think, I'm doing everyone around me actually, it's going to be good for them, because then they don't have to deal with me. They don't have to deal with this.
Right.
But that's not the case. Like there is so much hope, and there is so much beautiful on the other side of it. You just have to have the right tools and resources and support around you to get you out of the hole. So did you go through, after still having to work through and deal with a lot of that shame that you're referring to? Because that is another, like, you came out of it, but that also can pull you, that can keep you in bondage. Yeah.
So like I said, that was tough for me afterwards, just because I had so many people in my life that have already gone through that. So it's kind of almost like a survivor's guilt, like, thing that you get, that you feel like, it's hard to still look those people in the face afterwards, that that you almost let down, and then that almost makes it harder on your mental health now, knowing that you let these people down. It's still something I even carry to this day. Sometimes that you need to talk to, that there's some people out there that I feel like I haven't probably fully got everything unloaded, and it's been 11 years that you still feel like you don't fully have unloaded yet. And it's just crazy, the baggage that you carry around with you sometimes, even knowing that it's not good for you, you just sometimes can't let it go.
When you say unloaded, as in fully on your end or on their end?
Well, a lot on my end. So I still hold a lot of guilt, for a lot of this. And I had a couple situations leading up to my accident that a close friend had committed suicide a couple months before I did, that correlated pretty close with me. And so I took that super hard. And so that kind of played into all of it. And it's just crazy how many things can continually stack up. And so then, you know, you don't realize it's one thing or another. And that's what I tell everybody. So after I got into my accident, I actually went over to college in Southwest Minnesota State over in Marshall, Minnesota for 2 years. So I took up psychology as a major over there because I really wanted to get over there and try to figure out like what that one thing was that pinpointed like why people's mind go in the direction of suicide and things like that. And that was like almost, I tell somebody like almost one of the worst decisions I could have made because I realized once I got over there that there wasn't one reason. You know, there's thousands of reasons. I wanted to try to figure out what this one reason was to try to help people with it. And then you realize that there's so many reasons. Yeah. And you realize like, wow, I just opened up a whole can of worms that I thought was one thing, and now it's thousands of things, you know. But I did learn a lot doing that, through a lot of that, trying to help myself cope and kind of how other people do and stuff like that. So it wasn't a waste by any means, but yeah, it was definitely an awakening, realizing that, you know, and so many people always ask, you know, like, well, why did you do it? Well, and sometimes that's a lot easier said than done to try to explain some of those things into words.
Well, there's a lot of people that want, especially family. They're like, why? What happened? What could have I done different? How? And we just recently attended a memorial, and the pastor said, don't like those questions will drive you insane. Those questions, because a lot of times the person who did it doesn't even have the full answers. And so it's nothing that you could have done or couldn't have done or said or acted, or it's just a matter of checking in with anyone and everyone, right? Like just asking the questions, being point blank, finding different resources for people to tap into that you may not even know about. Because I guess in that, I was hiding so far. I was hiding to the point where my own husband and my own house didn't even know. So same thing. It's like people don't know, and so they can't take that guilt on themselves that they should have been there to help prevent it. Well, you may not even know that there was an opportunity to even step in, right? And in your case, you're saying that a lot of people may not have even known because we're good at hiding it.
Well, and that's where it comes back to sometimes, you know, like just to be kind to everyone, because you really have no idea what someone might be going through, you know, even though they show you this on the outside that they're smiling and stuff like that. I mean, you really have no idea what people go through on a day-to-day battle in their life, you know.
That person that cut you off in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily something they do all the time, right? Could be just having a bad morning.
Right.
Hey, man, I get it. I have bad mornings too. I probably cut people off too. Got to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Right? And ask questions.
Grace. Like I said to you, we got nothing but grace, man. Like if we just lived in more of a grace-filled, loving environment, I think there would be moments for us to stop and take notice. We're at a fast pace all the time too, so we don't a lot of times stop to just simply ask that question, and it's really important.
And I think a lot of things that I want to bring up, a lot of people think that like when it comes to suicidal things kind of like that you're this weak person or whatever, you know, that you're too weak to handle life and stuff like that. And I really don't think that's how that we should look at it, you know, as that. I mean, it really takes a lot for someone to realize that that's a direction that they're going down. Like this isn't just an easy decision that they just decide on a whim and this is something that goes down, you know, like this is something that a lot of them have thought about for a long time and have, you know, really almost justified what they're trying to do that most people would have no clue what any of those things are.
It really, the fact that you made that decision on that road that night and then you woke up grateful that you survived, that says so much right there about what your state of mind was in that moment that you made the decision, right? It's not almost illogical. You can't justify it. You can't put a finger on why. It just happened. And then afterwards, you were completely different. So something about the brain in that moment is just, it's a really hard thing to get out of, and it's a hard thing to combat. So what are some what advice do you give to people who feel like they're heading down that path to the point of almost the point of no return?
See, and sometimes I feel like I'm not the best person to talk about that because sometimes I feel like I don't even do it now today like I should, you know. I feel like I tell people all the time, you know, like don't be afraid to talk to people and don't be afraid to ask for help, you know, and stuff like that. And then at the same time, I put myself over in that category where I don't do as, you know, I try to tell people, but yeah, it really is just being willing to open up to people, trying to find that right person and whether who that is all the time. For me, I never really got the best results out of counseling, you know, sometimes to some people different than that. But for me, what I really discovered were my biggest place that I connected with God and stuff was in the outdoors. You know, I grew up in South Dakota here, and I started hunting a little bit later into high school and stuff like that or whatever. But that was really my happy place, was being out there in the wilderness and out there in the open. And so after I got into my accident, that was something that I thought I lost forever, you know, being paralyzed from the neck down. I just assumed right away that all these events were things that I would never be able to do again or something like that. And so that's been really eye-opening for me, finding all this kind of stuff that I'm able to do to get outdoors and hunt and fish and do all these things that I really never thought I would be able to do again. You know, and that's really my place where I find that I connect most out there with him.
What are some of the stories, and I can relate to you in that because my whole entire camera roll is full of sunsets and sunrises.
Sunsets and kids.
And kids. Because I see just the beauty of God. It's hard for us to comprehend how big he is. And when I look at the sky, I'm like, that's how big he is. Like the colors in the sky. So nature is a big one for me too, because Boundary Waters, I went to the Boundary Waters for years and I just love the outdoors, even with the big mosquitoes and everything. Like there's just something about it, right? When you think back to high school and you think back to your relationships with people, and you know, you mentioned that having that conversation or asking for help or whatever, who's one person you may have opened up to?
That is a tough one, you know, because I even have friends that, you know, that were best friends, you know, that I never really felt like I could open up to, you know, that'd be vulnerable. And so that is a really, really tough one to find that one person sometimes that you can open up to. And sometimes it's a complete stranger.
That's where I was going.
That you don't, you would have no idea, you know. Like I said, I have friends that we were super close. We grew up together our entire lives that I've never, probably even to this day, opened up about things like that, you know. And sometimes it's one of those things that you just try to guard. So you get so protective over, you know, where you feel like you've gone through so much already that if this one other person has this opinion about you, like that it's going to ruin your whole thing or whatever. When, man, it's just, you have to get back into realizing that it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks about you, you know, like as long as you're happy and you're following in God's path, like that's really all that matters. You know, he's the only one that you have to respond to and all of that. And so I think we get caught up too much in some of that too. And then in high school, you know, you get caught up in who's dating who or who wears what or all of that. And so it's like, that's a big thing to pile on top of that too, being that adolescent brain, and you just have so many things coming in at once that a lot of us have no clue how to deal with at the time and never ask for that help. And that's when it gets too far gone.
I do feel like too, you could talk to a friend and they're like, you're good. Cheer up, you know, and here I went and opened up, and disappointment. I didn't get the reaction that I thought I would. What are some, and so therefore opening up to a stranger might seem more appealing, but what are some of those character traits you might have looked for in a stranger?
I mean, really, obviously somebody that you can trust, but somebody that'll really, truly listen. I feel like there's so many people out there that listen to respond today. They don't listen to actually truly take everything in that you're going to. Like I said, people just listen to respond almost anymore before they even listen to the whole question. You know, I really had to try to remember that lately. I'm like, I just took my driver's license test again that I'm trying to work on. And so I was doing a prep test. And so I'd like read halfway through the question and click the answer. And then it was like wrong. And then you read back through it. I'm like, oh, well, you just have to read through the entire thing first before you could do that. So some people just jump to conclusions so fast that they don't really listen to really feel what you're trying to tell them and what you're going through. And like you said, sometimes people brush it off, and then that was that one time that you really decided you were going to try to open up to somebody and it didn't work. So I mean,
we live in a serotonin fueled world where the next thing, it's hard. It's actually physically, mentally hard to slow down and listen to someone for more than just 30 seconds because your phone's going to ding, something's going to happen, or you're not willing to take the next, deep question because you need another serotonin hit. I think that's a massive problem in our society, is that we've lost touch with just our person-to-person reality because people are messy.
And if we just quiet ourselves long enough, those around us open up. It's like this, when you see someone without it's like a look in someone's eye, you can see that there's something going on, and just to be there, be present, and just be silent sometimes is a little awkward, but the awkward is what brings the beauty. And people just don't like the awkward. I used to be one of them. So I'd fill the air. I think sometimes I still do. Ames is like, gosh, you talk a lot, but
is that true?
But to go back, did you have faith before this?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I've always, been a believer. How deep into it was I?
Yeah.
Not.
Because you were talking about church and how you guys lived by a church and you should go to church and all that. But like that deep personal relationship, that was a big piece of like the Sunset Comet and the outdoors and nature and different things. Because it's people in faith will often say like, I can't hear God. I can't hear him. It's not tangible. It's not someone I can cry out to. And in those moments of a deep relationship with Christ, I remember, I would go outside and I would, in the middle of the morning, I would cry out, Abba, Father, where are you? And so did you ever have those moments?
Definitely. Yeah. And so, to be able to be in that silent area sometimes, I feel like too much we get wrapped up in the hustle and bustle of life anymore, especially, like being in Sioux Falls in a big town and stuff like that, to be able to slow down and find that quiet place that you might be able to hear him. There's too many loud noises around us anymore to sometimes be able to hear what he's trying to tell us, that you just have to get to that place. And that's why I turned to it, because just to be out there in the quiet and take in all the beautiful things that he's created and still gives to us, and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely, I think sometimes we get wrapped up in the hustle bustle of a busy life that we don't think about some of the smaller things that we really have to in life.
So that's where you find your peace now in your adventure.
Well, so that's where I did. I really, the outdoors for me was what I found. But along my journey into trying to get back outdoors was extremely tough. Like I said, I got into my accident and thought that these were things I'd never be able to do again. I can't hold a gun or hold a fishing reel and things like that. And so it took quite a few years, actually. And so I've found and created a lot of different things now that I use a mount that mounts to my wheelchair from a company called Be Adaptive, where I'm able to aim a gun now with a joystick with my chin, and I sip on a hose, and that's what pulls the trigger, and I've got an electric fishing reel that I'm able to reel fish in on my own and things like that. And so this next really big step for me was starting this nonprofit called Wheelchair Adventures. And so I kind of started it out as a Facebook page about 6 years ago, just to kind of start trying to document my journey into getting back out there, because that was my thing, that I realized that there are so many opportunities out there, but most of the time people have no clue I mean, as far as where it goes into grants or nonprofit opportunities to go on some of these trips and stuff like that. And so then I really started trying to get resources together, that now on our website, we've got an adaptive resources tab that literally has every piece of adaptive equipment that I've ever been able to find or use, or something that they would be able to use that. Or there's a tab that has every nonprofit across the whole United States that I've ever found that can do stuff like, so just to try to get that stuff out there in front of people that otherwise have no clue that any of that is out there, that any of those opportunities are out there, or things like that. So that's been a really cool one for me. And so now this year we're gonna start pushing things even a little bit farther. We're gonna try to start coordinating a couple of hunts. So we've got 4 gentlemen with disabilities that we're going to be taking out this spring out on their first turkey hunts. So we're getting pretty excited about that. So that's kind of my passion right now, is trying to pass a lot of this information and opportunities on to these people like myself who just assumed that we were in a position now that we wouldn't be able to do the things we used to. Or
that's amazing. All right, and so in the chair that you're in right now, is this the one you use when you go out into the field?
It depends on the day. So I've also got one, a wheelchair that's on tracks, actually. And so amazing for getting outdoors and stuff like that. Kind of trying to coordinate sometimes the transportation of it. Sometimes they don't exactly fit into a little minivan like I have, or different things like that. So sometimes it's easier just to stay in this chair and just try to bomb it through. Try to bomb it through whatever you can, and
just hit the gas and go.
Yeah. We'll figure it out afterwards.
And so for these adventures, do you have chairs that other people can use? Is that a thing? Or?
So another thing with a goal of ours we're working on, we would love to start some kind of like an adaptive loan closet or something like that, because a lot of this adaptive equipment, a lot of the reasons so many people can't get access to it is so expensive.
Yeah, it is.
And again, a lot of people don't know about it. And then when they do know about it, it's so expensive. And so I had the opportunity, not this last fall, but the fall before that, to go with a nonprofit out in Wyoming called Wyoming Disabled Hunters. And so they took me and my family out there and took me out on an antelope hunt, and it was like all expense paid, and it was completely life-changing. And so that really started opening things up to me, where I was like, okay, like I'd really like to look into starting to see like what I could try to help do with some of these things. And so that's kind of where I've gotten into now with that. But with this loan closet, we would like to, we've acquired quite a bit of equipment through donations, as well as a couple other things that we're working on starting another part of our website that we can actually start loaning this equipment out to people. So we've got a couple of these different gun mounts. We've got a couple like recumbent bikes that you're able to pedal with your arms. We've got an adaptive kayak that someone's able to get out and do that. So just something we'd really like to start, that we can borrow these things out to people, because they're so expensive. And so right after I went out to Wyoming, a friend of mine was going to go out there, and they kind of had him set up with a little bit of a apparatus that maybe would have worked, but it wasn't exactly ideal. And so I had the opportunity to let them borrow my personal mount that I had at the time, and to send it out there with them, because at the time, I just couldn't justify where he had never been hunting before in his entire life, so for them to try to justify spending thousands of dollars on a gun mount that they really had no clue that if he was even going to enjoy or not, and so I found that on a lot of disabled websites that I follow on Facebook and stuff like that a lot of these people want to get some of this adaptive equipment, but they've never even got to try it before. So then they save up all this money, and they spend all this money on this equipment that they don't even know if they're going to enjoy, because they've never had an opportunity to even try it, So if we could get that, if we could start doing that for people, and at least let them use it once, or whether they're going to come use it over and over again. And so with that, we don't have any of the track chairs. We're actually working on a program with the state right now, though, actually. I believe they have 3 for sure, 2. One of them is at the outdoor campus here in Sioux Falls. Okay. And the other one is at the outdoor campus out in Rapid City. And just calling them, anybody with a disability can borrow that track chair out for up to 2 weeks at a time, completely free of charge. It comes with an enclosed trailer and everything. So those definitely help. And so, we'd kind of like to try to be along the same lines of that, just to be able to borrow this equipment out to people that want to try to get out and try these new things and really enjoy that fresh air that we truly believe does so much healing. I mean, both mentally and physically, I think it makes such a huge difference. And so
the stories you hear, I mean, the people you get to meet through this whole process, you could have lived this life in your home and just been like, this is what it is. Here I am, but instead you are doing things that you may have not ever thought you were going to be doing. And now you get to bless other people in your situation. So it's story. I bet, are you meeting people like crazy through this?
From all over the country. Yeah. I mean, the world, we're finding all kinds of different things that, and it's been amazing to hear other people's stories. And then on top of that, to see how they adapt different equipment to work for them, and stuff like that. We're coming to an age where technology has been such a blessing for a lot of people in my situation to be able to find these things and be able to do things. I have my whole house set up that I can control just about everything with my voice now and all kinds of stuff like that.
That's what I'm talking about right there. Yeah, that's my bag right there.
Yeah. Well, and for someone like myself, I live on my own. So I've got my own apartment here in Sioux Falls now that I've got caregivers that come in throughout the day, but like I'm alone the entire night through most of the day and stuff like that. And so without this technology and these things like that, that's not something that I would ever be able to do on my own.
Are you sharing that journey on your website as well? The type technology, light switches, voice recognition. Are you sharing what works and what hasn't worked on your website?
Yeah. So I try to share all of that underneath that adaptive equipment, different stuff. So for everything from like the mount that holds my phone. So we've got like RAM mount stuff that holds my phone to anything that's voice controlled as far as, Alexa and a lot of those where I've got a thermostat and lights. And I mean, it's all been so handy. And so now kind of my new biggest adventure is I am trying to start driving on my own again. So
amazing.
A lot of people my mom's not super excited about it yet. And so it's actually a system that'll be a joystick, just like my wheelchair. So forward is gas, back is brake, and then steering is just side to side like you normally would. And so it's completely all licensed and legal to drive on the road again. And amazing. I mean, it's just going to be just the pure opportunities that are going to be
freedom.
Open, Yeah. I mean, I've been super lucky that I've had an amazing support system in my life before and since then, or whatever. And nobody's ever really told me no, but sometimes you just get tired of having to ask for help, to be able to just go out and jump in a vehicle and drive and go do an errand on your own without having to coordinate a ride or stuff like that or whatever. And then it's really going to open up a lot more opportunities at work too. So I've worked at the local Ace Hardware here in town for a little over 2 years now. And so with this van, I'll be able to hopefully start working a lot more hours. So I use paratransit right now here in town. And it works, and it's a great opportunity for people, but I lose a lot of time throughout the day, a 45-minute window for them to pick me up, and then a 45-minute window for them to drop me off afterwards. And so it's like I'm losing out on a lot of things that to be able to drive again, I'll be able to take advantage of hopefully a lot more things. And
so is it a 4 or 8 hour workday for you? And what does that turn into just from the time you wake up, get ready to get there, and then get back to where you're basically off? Like you've started this process and you ended this process.
Yeah. So usually right now I'm doing like a 5-hour shift. So I do about 12:30 to 6-ish, somewhere in between there, kind of depending on obviously when the ride picks me up and stuff like that. But for me, so I start my mornings up pretty early, and then I've got a whole routine that takes quite a bit to get up in the morning. So once I am up and going, it's 11:30, getting up there. And so if I would be able to go straight from getting up to then, then that's, like I said, another hour there and then another hour afterwards that I can save. And so the opportunities would just be endless, and it would not only for myself, but again, to show so many other people that option's out there, I would have never assumed that something like that would be able to happen, only being able to use one arm.
Can you give our audience your honest advice on a parent with kids, and I'm walking through Ace, and my kids are asking me questions. Why is he? What's wrong with him? Why is he in a wheelchair? And they're asking the questions. Are you completely comfortable if a 5-year-old walked up to you and said, "Hey, what happened to you?"
1,000%.
Right?
I that's
Okay.
one of my biggest pet peeves sometimes is when, you get a young child that comes up to you that wants to ask 100 questions and the parent almost tries to shun them away, or something like that, where I'm so wide open about it that, the more information and examples and things like that we can get out to people, the more they know and can support you in your journeys too. So many people just have no idea and they don't. And so many people, like I said, are just willing to like shun their child away. Like,
They don't
like
want to
they're
make
going to
you
catch something.
Oh,
or something.
Yes, that too. And the uncomfortable, like they don't want you to be uncomfortable, and it might, like, the exchange might be weird. And because I can say that I was guilty of it before. Now, being more educated and understanding and being more open to just asking anybody any question. Like I know that before I wouldn't want to, in an essence, maybe inconvenience the person.
Yep.
But after our mutual friend who we love and adore, Trenton Bass and Missy, and learning so much through them in this journey has been eye-opening for me. And so I encourage it. I am with our little kids. I'm like, go ahead and have a conversation and engage, love on them. Like, get to know them.
Yeah. Treat us just like anybody else you would,
Yeah.
We're still the same person that we were before or anything like that. So yeah, really just try to embrace it. And that's too, some people in my situation, sometimes I think jump the gun a little bit, or sometimes get, maybe offended over something too simple, over something simple, whereas like I said, I try to be an open book. I'm pretty much open to anybody asking anything. And like I said, the more information that we can get out there for people, the more understanding that the entire world can be for all of this stuff.
Yeah. And you're good if people open doors for you or ask if it's just simply asking, right? Like you say, no, it's okay. I asked, what I mean? So I think more people need to be more open about just a simple question. Just ask the question. And
I think asking is the best too. Sometimes some people try to be a little bit pushy into it, where they're like, here, let me grab that door. And you're like, no, that's okay. I got it. And they're like, no, I got it. And I'm like, okay, sure. I guess you got the door then this time. We'll let it go now.
Because they want to feel good about doing it for you. That's the other piece.
And that's the doing it for. Most of the time they have nothing but the best intentions, and sometimes people overlook that sometimes.
Yeah.
But,
oh, this has been so great. We also have another mutual friend, Paul DeYoung, who's been on our podcast.
Yes.
I think you had therapy with Paul.
Yep. So I met him through physical therapy at Avera, and
just so wonderful. I was telling him,
small world.
It is a small world, because he said he loves our podcast, and he was on the podcast, and he just said, "Who are some of your upcoming guests?" And I said, "Your name," and he goes, "Oh, he's such a good kid." Yeah. So he says hello.
Yes.
You can say kid because he's.
Yeah. He is
there's an age gap between us.
Older mentor of ours.
Yes. Wonderful, man. What are some of the resources that you need for your website and your nonprofit for it to be a success? And also, I know that I'm sure the audience is like, what's the website? We'll have it in the description. But what is the website?
So it's just simply wheelchairadventures.org.
Okay.
So it's just a real simple one. And so we've got Facebook, Instagram, some TikTok stuff with that too. So we're kind of trying to explore into it. I'm really trying to open myself up to really trying to document a lot more of my stuff to show people out there. I haven't quite fully got over that gap of like hearing my own voice on video or something like that, but we're working on it. We're getting there one day at a time and stuff. So, but yeah, I'm really just trying to really document a lot more of this just to show people that these things are out there.
And are you in need of more equipment for your loan program?
So we're working on that. Obviously we hope to really start expanding all of that soon. So this last year we did a couple fundraisers just to kind of get established. And this is going to be our first year of really starting to implement different things like that. We've had a couple of things last year. So, we're always looking for any kind of outdoor adaptive equipment that someone may not be using. We could always use donations. You can go onto our website, again, at that wheelchairadventures.org, and they can always be on there. and just volunteers too. I mean, we've got some really cool events that we're looking to come up and coming that we can always use help in many different departments. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out and kind of let us know what your specialties are and maybe where you could help out in.
Okay.
And it'd be wonderful.
That's wonderful. We'll make sure and get all this posted on the actual episode so people can just click on it and find you pretty easy.
Yeah.
What about lodge access? Like hunting lodges? Do you guys do overnights or do you do just day trips?
So again, we really haven't done anything yet.
Okay.
So this is our first year that we're really implementing this. So with this turkey hunt, we just kind of handpicked a couple of guys local to us this first year to try to kind of work that out. But yeah, we'd really like to eventually kind of expand it into a program like a lot of the other places have, where we can open it up to applications for people kind of all over the United States that would be able to come and stay with us and things like that. And so I've actually got a really good friend, Nick Coulterman, who owns actually Fit My Feet here in town.
Yep.
And so he's got a couple lodges out by kind of the Howard area and stuff like that. And so I kind of started chatting with him in this last year about kind of trying to make those lodges a little bit more accessible. And we actually ended up coming across with, he just started a nonprofit of his own also. And so we're working together to try to get the funds to actually build a hunting lodge out there right now.
Wonderful.
So we like to do a 6-bedroom, fully accessible. And then it's actually going to have an event center attached to it so that we can try to have some kind of retreats and stuff like that out there, because that was the one thing that I really enjoyed on that trip that I got to take out to Wyoming, was not only did you get to go out and enjoy the outdoors, but also there were 7 of us and they put all of us up in the same lodge. And so we were there for 3 days together with this group of people that it was really amazing to be able to just be there together, to communicate. And again, like show each other different adaptive equipment that we've come up with and just to be able to communicate with somebody that's more or less in a similar situation that you were in. So that's a really big goal with a lot of this, is eventually to keep it together as a group and try to really be able to have that day that, even if it's only a 2-day hunt, at least that one night in between, that we can all meet together and have a place to worship and stuff like that. So
share a meal, have community. Yeah, that's wonderful, because we all need that. We all do. This is wonderful. I'm excited for more of the world to hear and learn more of what you're doing and continuing to follow your journey. You're doing really great things.
Exciting
things.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes, and I'm one to blame too, but again, sometimes I feel like I'm not doing enough, so it really takes a minute to step back and kind of look at, what you're really doing and stuff. And so I really think we're heading in the right direction to really change a lot of people's lives and to open up a lot of eyes of people that aren't disabled too, to show them kind of the things we go through and the things that we can still do.
Yeah.
That's great. Absolute honor.
Yes. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for listening. We want to change lives through this podcast. And if you want to support this podcast or our guests, please see the links below for our Patreon and giving links.
And like and subscribe, and also share our podcast as much as possible. Thank you.